Piled in the car, and I drove down that country road to our school, and there at the door was one of her favorite teachers waiting to meet her, and they skipped in together. And that was the last time that I saw her alive. I headed back home after dropping her off, and my mind was full of all the things I needed to do, the wash, the dishes, the Christmas shopping that I had postponed. And I decided I was going to try to eat a little bit before getting started with all that. So I sat down on the couch and I received a phone call. And that phone call would change everything that day. December 14th, 2012 was no longer just a date on the calendar for us. The message that I received was all of our schools in Newtown are in lockdown. There has been a shooting. And I digested that message for a minute. It was a recording, so I couldn't ask any questions back. I sat with it for a few seconds, and I decided I would call for more information. Surely there had to be more. I called Sandy Hook and got no answer. I called our intermediate school and also got no answer. And about that time, friends started calling in, wondering if I had any information, knowing that I was home. So I promised that I would get some information. I hopped in the car, and fortunately, I changed out of my jammy pants, and so grabbed a jacket and headed back down that country road again. But I was sure that I would be led to the high school, or maybe the middle school, or maybe I would find out about a false alarm, a toy gun that somebody thought was a real gun. We'd had plenty of lockdown drills and false alarms in our community before. We had practices and we had plans. So I kept my cool as I drove down the road, but I drove past the intermediate school where my older daughter was, and there was no activity there, just standard lockdown position with the driveway blocked off and a cruiser parked in the parking lot. So I knew they were in lockdown, but they were safe. I drove on, and I passed the high school, where I really believed I would land that day. I saw the same thing though, just one cruiser and a blocked off entranceway. And at about the time that it was starting to sink in that the emergency was at one of our elementary schools, response vehicles began overtaking my car on that country road. So I let them pass, and then I followed them. And they led me back to Sandy Hook, where I had just been a few minutes earlier. And I was one of the first parents to arrive. So I pulled my car off to the side, and as I was putting it in park, I started to notice right across from me that there were lines of children evacuating from the elementary school over to the firehouse. So I'm starting to realize at this moment, the emergency really is here at our school, but I'm seeing them evacuate as we had planned, as we had practiced, and it looks very orderly. Children are leaving in calm, orderly lines. They all have their hands on the shoulders of the child in front of them, and they all have their heads down because responders did not want them to see the carnage in the building on the way out. Didn't want them to see the broken glass and the damage to their beloved school. And in one of those lines, I spotted my 4th grade daughter. And I ran over to her and let her know that it was over. We were evacuating to safety, and she was to wait for me in the bays of the firehouse as we had practiced. So relief came over her face, and I blew her a kiss and told her that I was headed off to find her sister before we would go home. I began walking around the firehouse. I couldn't find Joey's class. I couldn't find Joey's teachers. I couldn't find any of her assistant staff. As a special needs student, she had an entire posse, basically. And I couldn't find any of them. I went up to the school and continued my search as far up as I could get, and no responders had any information for me either. I couldn't find our principal. I couldn't find our lead teacher, who acted as an assistant principal. I couldn't find our school psychologist. I could find no one from our administrative team. And I would realize later that morning that the reason was because that administrative team was gone. In the very initial seconds of the attack on our school, our principal and school psychologists were killed instantly. Our lead teacher was critically wounded and was one of the first to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. So our leadership, everyone that was in charge of the plan, everyone that had run the drills, everyone that knew all of our children, wasn't there. Not for the parents, not for the students, for the teachers, or the first responders arriving on scene. And ever the teacher, I started making these mental notes, and I was thinking, my goodness, if ever in an event like this, we have to build in redundancy. We have to be prepared to step in to one another's roles. We have to have multiple backups.